I would like to thank Deputy Ward for all his work on this motion. It's a very technical motion and I was proud to co-sign it on behalf of Labour. Minister, I heard the response from the Minister for Housing earlier on, and to be honest I was shocked, even by my standards, at how bland and how unresponsive to the substantive issues raised in the motion the Minister's response was, because government have designed a scheme that's so rigid it cannot respond in real time. And this is not a grant scheme, this is redress. And there is no acknowledgement in anything anyone from government said about the harm that this scheme is doing to people, the stress it's causing people, the real mental anguish. And you see, there's a misconception out there, Minister, that this is just an issue up, say, in the Inishowen Peninsula. It's not. This is an issue in Limerick. I had Olivia Sheehan, the co-chair of the Limerick Defective Concrete Blocks Action Group, in my constituency office on Monday, nearly in tears, as she described to me how the house that she bought little over a decade ago is falling down around her. She first discovered this when she went to get the SEAI grant to pump the walls, which exposed all the cracks. She, her mortgage is going to be doubled, and she is a lone parent. She is a working lone parent, and there's going to be an extra 125 grand or whatever added onto her mortgage because the scheme doesn't cover fully the breadth of work that needs to be done to her home. Even her home is a semi-detached house, so she has to put a wall inside a wall, essentially, inside the house, because they won't test the house next door. And look, we've discussed this many, many times in this chamber, and we are 5 years on from the opening of the scheme and 2 years on from the enhanced scheme. And the fact of the matter is that the scheme is deeply, deeply flawed. And as per usual with schemes in this state, and this is always the way we treat victims of abuse. Institutional Ireland has done this for generations. The burden of proof is always put on the victim, and the victim has to prove that they are not a liar. And that is the way this scheme operates. And the fact of the matter is that, we are at the tip of the iceberg in the city I represent, Limerick, in relation to this. There's a quarry, a roadstone quarry, out in Bunratty, where these defective concrete blocks that Olivia Sheehan has in her house came from in the early 90s. And the fact of the matter is we don't fully yet know how seriously we are actually genuinely affected by this. And there has been, the lack of regulation, on behalf in particular of the Fianna Fáil governments at the time. It's not just in relation to this. We see it in relation to apartments. We see it in relation to various aspects of bad housing policy. And I'm very afraid that this new government, with what the Minister is doing in relation to apartment standards and VAT cuts, has not learnt a single lesson. And the proof is in the pudding in relation to this scheme. Just over 220 dwellings completed nationwide up to mid-2025. A year ago, government promised to extend the increase in the cap for everyone availing of the scheme. Where is the legislation? This is just another delay, another mental anguish and mental torture that these poor families and individuals are being put through by the state. The government must fast-track the promised legislation for retrospective payment. Families who received grant approval under the old Society of Chartered Surveyors Ireland costings are now faced with tenders from contractors that obviously reflect current market conditions, are way above what they were. People cannot find tens of thousands of euros if they're lucky, if not hundreds of thousands of euro, to plug the enormous gaps in what they are required to pay. This is not their fault. These homeowners must have their grant award increased in line with current costs. And the Minister needs to come in, the Minister for Housing in particular, and to accept that his predecessor scheme, that it doesn't work. that we need a new scheme, we need an end-to-end scheme, we need 100% redress, and we have the model there with the pyrite scheme in Fingal. And the pyrite remediation scheme is structured on an end-to-end basis. It's not a grant scheme, and it doesn't ask homeowners to be project managers. And we have situations there now in relation to this scheme where people are sitting behind desks inside in the housing agency, downgrading people at the stroke of a mouse or at the stroke of a pen without even going out to see the house. That is disgraceful. Disgraceful. And when you look at the difference with the pyrite scheme, is it any wonder that people all along the West Coast are looking with envy and with anger? And this motion points out the terrible psychological effects of the trauma and stress that these families have gone through, which it would not have been as bad as it is if the state had responded appropriately without making them, as it always does and as it always has, prove that they are not lying. Why would you lie about something like this? Their homes are crumbling around them. And I welcome the fact that this motion recognises the need for mental health supports. These families have been let down by the state, left to languish in houses that were once treasured family homes. I remember Deputy Ward in his first speech, and it stuck with me ever since, say our houses are like Weetabix. And we need urgency from government on this. We cannot continue to fail these people, and I'm really disappointed by the counter motion. I think it is absolutely unacceptable, and I would urge government to rethink.